All right, team, welcome back to After Hours. We have a lot of great topics today. We're going to keep it very macro, maybe not all the way macro, but we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, topics that we rarely talk about because you know us. We are altcoin boys, but we will talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum today because there is some news coming out causing some fear within the crypto market. We're going to be discussing buying strategy, RNC crypto promises, and if you do not know what the RNC is it's the Republican National Committee, and they're behind their guy Donald Trump right now. So we are going to discuss the promises they've made for crypto, and we're also going to discuss spot Ethereum ETF news. This is After Hours, like I said. And Maddie, let's jump right off the top here. We saw a very interesting weekend. We now see Bitcoin at $56,000, and these were expected pullbacks that we foresaw a while ago. All right, but now we've been in this range for some months now, and this is really irking people. You know, we talked about in the past how these sideways trading actions, these periods, shake people out, and people don't want to be in situations like this. And so it is important that we maintain frame and continue buying. So I just wanted to tell you guys, we've seen ETH down 27% off its high, HBAR down 50%, API3 down 64%. Maddie, if you are not DCAing right now, you're a failure. And if you're a Bitcoiner and haven't deployed your dry powder bag right now, I don't know what you're doing. Maddie, what should be the strat right now?
So I think the biggest thing to take into consideration with the pullbacks that we've seen here is that there is kind of like that herd mentality that people start to develop, and they start to get super hyper focused on like the micro moves of one individual cycle, and they start to kind of throw out all the ideology of charts rebalancing, the ideas of charts reaccumulating after a big set of impulses and creating higher lows, and they start to throw all that out the window. And even within our own group, we've had some members earlier on towards even the top of this year saying, "Oh, it's different this time. Only shallow pullbacks for Bitcoin, minus 10%, minus 12%." But there's really no rule that says that has to be the case, right? So for me, when I saw these big sets of impulses, and we even had some new people in our group, and they're anxious to get into positions and they want to know to buy, and they go, "Oh, hey, well, what if I miss it?" Well, you might miss it, right? But I'm telling you guys, this is what the charts are telling us. This is what we should be looking for. Here's the areas that are much bigger value zones. And the vast majority of the targets that we had on our website for the value zones got filled. We had a big flurry over the last couple of weeks of our members going, limits filled, limits filled, limits filled, right? And that's not because, we are wizards, or, we can tell exactly what's going to happen in the future. I can't tell you how long it's going to happen, right? This has been over 130, 140 days of consolidation and now correction. So people have this expectation based on what they see in this, bullish impulses like we saw from October through March. And they go, well, this is now what's going to happen over the next 18 months. And that's not the case at all. So I hope that this is, especially if you're new here, a lesson to you guys that, you don't have to rush into anything, being patient, setting limits, identifying areas of interest. And if price is too lofty, price is just too lofty. Don't chase the market. Let the market come to you. That's probably the biggest piece of advice I had one of my older mentors give to me about 6 or 7 years ago, was not to chase price. And that was a difficult thing for me at first. Now, especially after I've studied the markets for years, and I do see that these corrections do come, especially after big sets of impulses, you become a lot less itchy. You make a plan, you set some limits, and then you just let them come to you. Let the market come to you.
Maddie, I have my own thoughts about this, but if you're a Bitcoiner right now, you should absolutely be deploying your dry powder bag. I mean, this is the largest pullback we have seen on the run up. I mean, think about where we at in the bear market and we rose out of, okay? This is the largest pullback we have seen since January of 2023. And so if you have a dry powder bag, a fiat reserve bag in stablecoins, should you be deploying that if you are a Bitcoiner right now?
Yeah, so we probably got away from that question with my little ramblings here, but it is a good question. So we've talked about risk to reward, and that's really what it always comes down to for me, right? Like, what is the potential downside risk here? What is the potential upside reward? So now that we've really, dove down, we, really tapped the low 50s, we've done some rebalancing. I think the downside risk here to the bigger liquidity zone would be kind of like more towards the 45K region. So we'll consider downside risk from current market from 56K down to 45K. So that would be kind of your downside risk to next immediate major support. Upside reward, we're looking upwards of like 120 to maybe like 180, 200K is kind of like that top there. So now we have a 2x plus on the table for you to potentially enjoy for this cycle standpoint based on fibs. And of course, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but we always have to be rational individuals. There is a bigger and better risk reward, on the table right now. Do we potentially maybe even see a lower price than these cycle lows in this next bear market? That's possible. You might get an opportunity to do a bigger and more aggressive reaccumulation. But I would say, if you were looking at Bitcoin at the 70, 68, 65K mark, and you're looking at Bitcoin now, you're obviously in a much better spot risk to reward wise. Now, am I putting my money into Bitcoin here at 56K? Absolutely not. Am I looking for some reversal signals to open some leverage longs and catch some short-term swing trades in here? 100%. I do think that we are seeing some very, very good and healthy behavior in the markets right now. Glad to see this correction. And, I know a lot of people out there, they're like, well, we've already sat through all this bearishness. We've already sat through enough accumulation. We don't get to decide that. The market will tell you when it's ready.
Maddie, we're about to get into some Bitcoin and Ethereum news, but before we get into that, team, become a Crypto Charge member. You can click the pin link in the comment section down below. It will take you to our website. And this year so far, we have updated the consistent investor strategy. It is, instead of it being 10 minutes, it is now, what was it, 47 minutes? So a lot of information in there if you want to learn how to deploy, how to sell, what assets to be buying. It is really extensive. Maddie has also done some Discord exclusive streams in Discord, and we got those recorded and up on the website for you guys. So a lot of new content on the site for you guys if you're looking to get educated. And of course, you can hop into the Discord and chat with the community and become more smart there. Let's get into the news here, and there are Bitcoin fears circling right now. So first off, we saw Mt. Gox was one of the biggest crypto exchanges in the world, hacked in 2014, and they're now repaying, or they're paying creditors. Nearly 9 billion was distributed to Mt. Gox creditors, and we are also seeing Germany's government has been selling large amounts of Bitcoin. In January of this year, police in the eastern German state of Saxony seized 50,000 Bitcoin, roughly about 2.2 billion at the time. And Germany's BKA holds now roughly 32,000 Bitcoins, about 1.9 billion in Bitcoin. Maddie, should these narratives with Mt. Gox and Germany selling Bitcoin, the parliament selling Bitcoin, frighten investors?
There's always going to be a narrative for selling pressure. I'm going to be a person who always, especially just a student of the charts for so long now, going to be of the higher belief of market makers yanking price around into greater pockets of liquidity to fill bids and, essentially fill their pockets. That is how they make money, guys, is these market makers need to fill as many orders as possible. If you can drag price around to bigger pockets of liquidity, you're going to fill exponentially more orders. Out of these two specific headlines, though, Germany doesn't have as big of this kind of like intensive need to sell this seized Bitcoin, right? They didn't realize it necessarily at a crazy price or anything. They're not investors. This is a very different set of circumstances. Now, I would say that if we were to say out of the two of them, Mt. Gox would probably have the bigger chance of higher selling pressure because it's been locked up for so long, right? So if I have Bitcoin from years and years and years ago, and now I'm finally getting that Bitcoin back, and I never even had the opportunity to sell that, I'm up 50, 100x potentially on that position. I'm incredibly likely to sell that position. And I'm not even going to be mad at those investors, right? Like you're up 100x, and you haven't seen this money in 10 years. Not mad. I would do the same thing, right? I'd be realizing boku profits right now. So I think that the Germany narrative was kind of tossed in to make people feel better, like, they're almost done selling. But, guys, like we talked about, 45K could be a bottom here for Bitcoin. We have maybe satiated it here in the low 50s. But, these narratives really are more comfort narratives, in my opinion. I don't think that they're going to be the driving force of, once these two things are done, there's no more selling pressure for Bitcoin. Because we're going to get another correction in the future, and people are going to look around and dig as hard as they can to find the next narrative. And, price is going to rebalance when it's going to rebalance and ready to move up when it's ready to move up.
It's so funny because, I struggle with shows like this sometimes, Maddie, because these narratives in the grand scheme of things don't matter. Like, if you bought Bitcoin today and looked 4 to 6 years in the future, you'll probably be ahead, right? And that's buying Bitcoin now, but you
Right.
also have to have the strong mentality to go through that bear market being underwater. It's just like, why not just wait and buy the bear market? So it sucks with narratives like this, because like I would like to sit here and tell you guys, like, honestly, none of this really matters. None of this is going to affect Bitcoin in the grand scheme of things. And if it's not affecting Bitcoin in the grand scheme of things, and it's not going to hurt price like what we imagine. Like, what if we do see a 48,000 Bitcoin, right? Does that mean we're going to see a 36K Bitcoin? Does that mean we're going to keep going lower from there? I don't think so. But this is just a lot of selling pressure that we have to get through right now before we see movement upwards, right? Because that is the track we are on right now, higher highs and higher lows. Maddie, I thought this was interesting from a member of German Parliament. Her name is Joanna Kotar, and she said in a post on X last month, rather than selling its Bitcoin, the government should be holding the token as a strategic reserve currencies. And Maddie, many are finding success holding Bitcoin right now. We look at MicroStrategy. I pulled the numbers on there. They're up $14 billion right now. Or if you look at El Salvador, they're up 50% on their position right now. Good or bad call for Germany's government to be selling Bitcoin right now, especially at these prices?
Kind of like I mentioned in our previous little bit here, they don't have a cost basis because this is seized Bitcoin, right? Like this is not purchased Bitcoin. So there's no cost of entry for them. So to sell, when we are, below even just the most recent high that we made in this last set of impulses up, I think is a bit foolish, especially considering you could be selling them for at least $100,000 per coin, as we move into the cycle here. So I think that it's a bit foolish to be selling this early. But again, if you look at sometimes the internals of what's going on in the government, they didn't pay anything for it and they want to fund some other project or, get more funding for the police department or whatever. It's free money, right? So they're going to take it.
All right, Maddie, let's talk about the RNC, the Republican National Committee, and they are behind their guy, Donald Trump. And they are making promises to not hinder innovation with crypto. And instead of pulling up the tab, I'm just going to read the notes I jotted down from what they said, because it wasn't a lot. They talked about AI and some other technology, how they don't want to hinder, but they specifically wrote out crypto. And here's the things that they wrote out. They want to defend the right to mine Bitcoin. They want to defend the right to self-custody digital assets. Transaction fee from government surveillance and control. End unlawful and un-American crypto crackdown, aka Gary Gensler. And oppose the creation of a CBDC. And Maddie, I wrote this question down well before the show, and you're going to absolutely hate it, but I think it makes good content here. Is Donald J. Trump going to save Bitcoin in America?
So, first of all, full disclosure, I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. At the time, he had a very, what I thought was libertarian platform. That the type of language that you guys see in front of you right here applied very closely to some other stuff. Like he promised he was going to go on this big campaign for federal open carry for firearms, all these different things that, sounded very American, very pro-freedom, very self-sovereignty, right? And that's what a lot of this comes down to is, protecting the right to mine Bitcoin. And obviously we should be able to do whatever we want with our machines, regardless of how energy consumptive it is, right? There's people who play games out there on their machines that, are drawing more power than some of these ASIC miners are for Bitcoin. Self-custody, anti-government surveillance, that's not going to be the case no matter what. There's not going to be a situation where you're not going to have all these exchanges, crack down on. They're going to have more and more forensic teams that come on. So yeah, it sounds great on paper, but I'm going to say that maybe one of these things are actually going to stick. The rest of them are just empty promises. And I don't think that Biden's going to do anything that's positive for crypto either here. If we're just being completely frank, I think that one of them is just being more overt about it. The other one is being more covert about it. You guys go look at the 2016 proposition for what Donald Trump promised. You're going to find very little on that list that he actually accomplished there. So again, I know that it's a bipartisan effort. You can't do everything alone as the president. That's the whole point of checks and balances. But remember, a lot of these guys are all lip service because once you've put that little vote on paper and they're in office, they don't give a shit about you anymore. All right. So I just want you guys to think about that. They don't care about you having liberty. They don't care about you having sovereignty. They care about control and taxation. Those are their two mandates when it comes to government.
If the RNC panel wrote on this like a guarantee firing of Gary Gensler, would that have worked for you, Maddie?
I mean, still there's no promise once it actually happens, right? I mean, maybe it would have been a little bit of a stronger point, but again, campaign, ideology are nice on paper. There's just too many politics within our current system now that keep presidents from actually being able to come in and execute on what they have in front of them. I just unfortunately don't believe what I hear.
Yeah, unfortunately, from what we've heard of the Trump being outspoken, crypto is just still not at the forefront of topics. Like even if you looked at
Right.
Biden and Trump debate, crypto did not come up once. Trump
Golf did.
golf did. Trump constantly talked about the border, talked about
Right.
immigrants, and skewed away from foreign wars right now. So that's where the focus is. And unfortunately, here, I don't think we are going to see these things. Like some of these, these are promises, so these are guarantees, but I don't think we're going to see these things. Like especially looking at Trump's first term, like he made a lot of guarantees and a lot of those fell through. We didn't get exactly the border wall he planned for. Remember, hey, Mexico's going to pay for it. Yeah, we got a little fence that you could stick your arm through. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that was a complete accomplishment for what he was trying to go for
Right.
there. Let's talk about VanEck. They officially files for S1 for its spot Ethereum ETF. I'm just going to pull this up on Ethereum ETF tracker right here on, was this Blockworks? Yeah. And so we have 7 pending spot Ethereum ETFs right here, Batty. And my question for you here is, so of course we saw 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs at the top of this year, and that didn't push price ahead like people like to say, but it just continued with where Bitcoin price was going. But we did see a lot of inflows within those spot Bitcoin ETFs. What would it look like? And would it fast track us to higher Bitcoin prices? Obviously, this is a spot Ethereum ETF, but we're talking about crypto adoption with ETFs that make it easier for your average investor to get into crypto, into Ethereum. Would this propel us forward in crypto market right now?
Long term, yes. I just do not believe in ETFs having this immediate buying pressure on the markets. And we saw that with the first Ethereum ETF that was approved, and you actually had the pump ahead of that, sideways action, and then a sell-off after the fact. I think that people get overly bullish on some of these narratives, and they think that it always means immediate term effects on the market. But really, these are more long-term effects on the market. I think the bigger wave of maybe even a little bit less volatility in the market and more long-term growth comes to basket ETFs. So more like indexes like we have with the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. If you allow people to not even have to think about a single asset, worry about what's inside these indexes, and just know, hey, these 50 assets are all focused on smart contracts. Great, give me the smart contract exposure. Yeah, these ones are all focused on oracles. Give me the oracle exposure, right? Those are the things that increase larger amounts of liquidity in the market, give us great long-term growth, and maybe even less volatility as this market maturates over time. So yes, I'm always very excited for new listings, more exposure, new exchanges, but I don't think it has that immediate effect that everyone expects. I would never, ever buy or sell based on a singular ETF potential approval or not. Maybe you get a little pop in price, maybe people get a little bit excited, but I don't think it's anything that's going to be life-changing like that. Even with an XRP approval, I think that a lot of people look at that and go, once we have an XRP ETF, that's going to change everything. It'll be great. It'll be great that your grandpa can just add, XRP straight into his stock portfolio. But I don't think you're going to have, millions of people pouring in, dying to get the spot XRP ETF. If people really, really wanted the exposure right now, they could get it through Coinbase. They can get it through Kraken. They can get it through Robinhood. They don't have to overcomplicate it. They can just add it. This really applies, in my opinion, more to the older generation that refuses to step outside of their standard brokerage account. So ETFs are good, but they're really more of an old man's game. There's additional fees with that. Might as well just buy and hold self-custody.
If you had a Matty B ETF, what assets would be grouped into them?
Oh, it would probably be something like we have over on CryptoCharge.com under my portfolio there. No, I think that if I had to have a blended index that somebody could buy, I would try to include I would say maybe no more than 30 picks in the entire basket, just because my portfolio is concentrated, but I know people want to have a little bit more of that blanket exposure. So I'd probably pick at least 4 or 5 payment plays. I'd pick like maybe like 4 or 5 AI picks. Maybe even throw a little Bitcoin and ETH in there just to have kind of like the longer term slow exposure. Again, we're talking about an index here, so we're talking about like a blended exposure, not doubling down on individual assets. So I don't know. I think I would have to probably think a little harder on exactly what would go in there, but I'd probably stick with maybe like a 30, 35 max asset for that blended approach. And again, I would want to make sure that this would be a index that would be good for a wide variety of holders, not just super young investors or super old investors.
No, that's good. No, Maddie, I would want my ETF to whipsaw like API 3, like large exposure to API 3, big whipsaw,
I want to have anxiety every day when I wake up and check my portfolio.
It's so funny. It's funny that you bring it up about anxiety, because it's like, I don't know why people, and this is kind of like the message of the show here, because I was on Twitter today, and so many people have anxiety. These are like fear events to them, and they get scared. And going back to what I said earlier, like I hate covering like news like this, and I really do, because when you get down to the charts and go really large with it, you hop on a monthly time frame on Bitcoin, that kind of like gives you a good frame. It's like, oh, these small weeks, these small days have like do not matter at all. When you are buying
Right.
within the time frames that we've said, you get pretty successful right now, and within these periods, upcoming periods. Because I have to say upcoming periods, because when I look at like my Casper position, I'm still chasing my Casper DCA lower right now.
Right.
And that's just the position of where I'm at with some of these altcoins right now. But it's worthwhile. I hopped on. I don't know why I did. We have like 30 seconds left here, so I'll just say this, Matt. I hopped on BitBoy's show the other day because I tap in with him from time to time, just because like he's had this crazy he was like one of the biggest influencers I found out whenever it was like 2017 when he started doing his weekly videos, his shows. And so he's been here, but he has like a weird history, and it's more personal than it is business. And so I just popped in, and he's just so funny because he wants to tell his audience like, hey guys, be ready by September, let's buy right now. And it's like, guys, we don't know where this ends up for us. We know what we've done, and we know what we need to do is buy. We need to buy in certain ranges so that we can sell in other ranges. That is the messaging. Forget about what month, forget about, even the charts we pulled up about the election. Take those out of your frame, take the expectations, because once you start looking at those, you start like setting alarms on your phone, and it's like, okay,
Right.
like get ready to sell your Bitcoin in, September, October of this year. It's like, no, you need to be level-headed, and your only thought right now should be buying. Casper, XRP, Zcash, these cryptos, our favorite altcoins, buying. Bitcoin, if you're a Bitcoiner, you should have deployed your dry powder bag by now. And if not, well, it's probably because you don't have a dry powder bag. You pull it in off of your bank account. And you're just not ready like that. That's why you need to become a Crypto Charge member. But all this strategy stuff that we should be doing right now, strategy, buy. That's what you should be doing. Buy right now. And then you can thank
Right.
us later and join the community and celebrate. It's like, hey, I wasn't a member, but I followed your advice on the show. And it's like, oh, well, welcome. All right, team, that's all we have for today. The Ask Maddie Show, 2:30 p.m. Pacific this Wednesday. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section down below, and we will see you then. Bye, guys.